All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Indian Energy Exchange Limited, IEX, and their performance in Q3 of fiscal year 2025.
Sounds good.
We've got quite a bit to unpack, from their financial statements to investor presentations, press releases, and those board meeting notes.
Yeah, lots to dig through.
Our goal is to go beyond the typical headlines,
Yeah.
to really help you grasp where IEX stands now, what's fueling their growth, and maybe even get a sneak peek at what the future might hold for them. Think of it like getting the inside scoop behind the scenes kind of stuff.
Definitely. And I think one of the things that makes this deep dive particularly interesting is that we're not just going to be focusing on the numbers, right?
Right.
We'll connect IEX's performance with the broader trends in India's power sector so we can really see the bigger picture, why they're doing what they're doing.
Exactly. So let's kick things off with the financials. IEX had a pretty stellar Q3, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. They saw a strong increase in electricity volume, nearly 16% year on year, reaching 30.5 billion units.
Billion with a B.
That's right, billion units, or Bs as they're often called. And the trading of those renewable energy certificates, the RECs, those jumped even higher, up 31% to 26.52 lakh.
LAC. Now, just for our listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly does LAC mean?
Oh, good point. A lakh is a unit commonly used in India. It equals 100,000. So 26.52 lakh RECs is a significant volume being traded.
Got it. So big numbers all around. And it looks like those big numbers translated into some pretty impressive revenue growth too, right?
Definitely. Their revenue went up by 13.7%, hitting 160.5 crore.
And their profit after tax, the PAT, that's looking pretty good as well, huh?
Oh, yeah, up almost 17% for Q3 alone. And even more impressive is the 22.8% growth in consolidated PAT for the first 9 months of the fiscal year.
Now, one thing that really jumps out at me here is that IEX isn't just benefiting from a general upswing in the sector. India's overall electricity demand increased, yeah, but only by 3% in Q3, and 5% for those first 9 months of fiscal year 25. So it seems like IEX is outperforming the sector as a whole.
You're absolutely right. They're definitely exceeding the average growth.
So the question is, what's driving that outperformance? What's their secret sauce? Their investor presentation points to 6 key growth drivers. Things like, increasing demand and supply, more capacity being added for renewable energy and storage, and of course, that favorable regulatory environment we always hear about. What are your thoughts on these? Do they hold up under scrutiny?
Well, I think all of those factors play a role, but one of the most impactful drivers, potentially, is the possibility of the government extending that trading period for power procurement on those exchanges. Right now, it's capped at 1 month.
1 month.
But there's been some talk, some chatter, about extending it all the way up to 11 months. Now, if that happens, you could see a massive shift in volume from those traditional bilateral contracts to IEX's platform.
Wow, that would be a game changer. But, and this is a big but, is IEX equipped to handle a shift of that magnitude? Are they ready?
Well, it seems like they're already taking steps to prepare for that potential shift. They've been introducing new market models. For example, they've got Firm Dispatch RE and Round-the-Clock RE models. Those are specifically designed to make renewable energy sources more reliable by incorporating storage into the mix.
Makes sense. Reliable supply is key, especially for those DISCOMs, the power distribution companies. This could be a real incentive for them to start buying more renewable energy through the exchange.
Precisely. And it's not just about introducing these new models. They're also leveraging India's increasing regional diversity in the power sector.
Regional diversity. How so?
Well, you have some states that have a surplus of solar power during the day, while others might face peak demand in the evening. What IEX can do is connect those regions, facilitating a more efficient allocation of resources.
So they're like the middleman, ensuring everything runs smoothly, almost like an air traffic controller. Making sure the power is flowing to where it's needed most.
That's a great analogy. It really captures the essence of their role. And all of this is happening while power prices are actually softening.
Softening, you mean going down?
Exactly. That average day-ahead market price on IEX actually dropped by 26% year on year.
Wow, 26%. That's significant. What's behind that decline?
Well, they attribute it to ample coal availability, which in turn has brought more sellers into the market. The average price now is RS 3.71 per unit.
All right, so break it down for us. What does all this mean for the average person in India? What does it mean for you and me for our electricity bills?
Well, for those discoms, the power distribution companies, and for the large commercial and industrial consumers, it means lower costs for buying power. And on the flip side, for the generators, it provides a platform to sell any excess power they have efficiently. Ultimately, a more liquid and competitive marketplace benefits everyone involved.
Now, beyond the electricity market, IEX has been making some intriguing moves towards diversification. Their gas exchange, IGX, is showing some pretty explosive growth. I mean, we're talking 93% year-on-year growth.
Yeah, that's quite impressive.
And there's even been talk of them launching a coal exchange soon.
Right, although that's still pending government approval at this point.
But still, it seems like they're thinking ahead, planning for the future.
Absolutely.
But hold on, didn't IEX also announce a dividend recently?
They did. They declared an interim dividend. RS 1.5 per equity share for FY24-25. The record date for that is January 31st, 2025.
So what does that tell us?
It's a positive signal, I'd say. It shows that the company feels confident about their financial performance and what the future holds.
Definitely sounds like they're feeling good about their position. And speaking of positions, they've also just appointed a new independent director to their board, right? Mr. Pradeep Kumar Pujari, starting March 12th, 2025.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, what's interesting about this appointment is Mr. Pujari's background. He's got tons of experience in the power sector, right? He was secretary to the government of India and the Ministry of Power, and also chairman of the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, the CERC.
Exactly. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table.
So they're bringing in a real expert, someone who knows the ins and outs of the regulatory landscape.
Absolutely. And as IEX continues to grow and branch out, his insights are going to be really valuable, helping them navigate this ever-changing energy market.
It's been a pretty dense conversation so far. We've covered a lot of ground, but it feels like we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
So what are some key takeaways, the big things you think our listeners should be walking away with from this part of our deep dive?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that IEX is firing on all cylinders right now. They've got a really solid track record when it comes to financial performance. They're setting their sights high with ambitious growth plans, and they're keeping a very close eye on the future of energy in India.
Yeah, they're not just going with the flow. It's like they're shaping the energy landscape themselves. But that raises another question. What about the potential challenges? What obstacles might they encounter as they push forward with their growth strategy? That's something we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive, so make sure to stick around. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into IEX. Last time we were talking about their impressive financial performance, those ambitious growth plans, all that good stuff. One thing that stuck with me was their emphasis on what they call customer centricity.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
It seems like more than just a buzzword.
Right. It's not just talk. You can actually see it in the way they're engaging with their stakeholders. Like they're doing these capacity building workshops for those discoms, the power distribution companies, and holding conferences to promote open access. And they've even developed these digital platforms like Energex to make it easier for participants to onboard and actually start trading.
So they're not just building a marketplace, it's like they're building a community.
That's a really good way to put it. And to support that community, they're making, pretty significant investments in technology.
Right. Like what?
Well, they're implementing things like AI-powered solutions for infrastructure monitoring, beefing up their security with really high-end firewalls, and they're even moving towards a microservices architecture, which is, all about scalability and resilience.
Sounds like they're playing the long game, building a platform that can handle, serious growth down the line.
They have to. Remember, IEX has a pretty commanding market share in the Indian electricity market. We're talking 85%.
85%?
Seriously. Yeah, so that's a ton of transactions they need to be able to manage.
Wow, that's huge. But technology is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they also need to be thinking about, the bigger picture, the whole global energy transition that's happening.
For sure, for sure. And they're not just talking about it. They're actually working to integrate renewable energy and storage into their marketplace. We talked about those new market models before, like firm dispatchery and round-the-clock R, which are all about making renewables more reliable by adding storage.
Speaking of storage, what about those battery energy storage systems? The, what they call BSS, is that right?
BES.
They seem to be getting a lot of attention lately.
Yeah, and IEX sees them as a crucial element, especially as we see more and more renewables coming online.
Yeah.
BES can help to keep the grid balanced. They charge up when there's extra solar or wind power, and then they discharge during peak demand. So they help smooth out all those fluctuations, which is really important for grid stability.
So they're like giant batteries, basically.
Exactly, like a giant buffer for energy. And IEX is working on creating these market mechanisms that allow BSS to participate, effectively.
Huh.
And that benefits everyone. I mean, BS owners get to earn revenue by providing grid services, and the whole system benefits from more reliability and less dependence on fossil fuels.
So IEX is kind of like a one-stop shop for all things energy in India, whether it's electricity, gas, coal, even these new technologies like BSS. They want to be the platform that brings it all together.
It's definitely an ambitious vision, but it seems like they've got, the momentum and the expertise to pull it off.
And one of their boldest moves has got to be that idea of extending the trading period to 11 months.
Yeah.
If they can make that happen, it could revolutionize the whole power sector.
No doubt about it. And they're already laying the groundwork for that shift by introducing products like what they call long-term procurement through exchanges, LPSC for short.
What does that do?
It lets discoms lock in power contracts, long-term power contracts at competitive prices, all through the IEX platform.
Makes sense.
So it gives them price certainty and reduces their reliance on those traditional bilateral agreements.
So they're kind of leveling the playing field, making it easier for those smaller players to participate and actually benefit from the energy market.
You got it. They're fostering competition, driving innovation in the sector.
But we have to acknowledge that this energy transition isn't going to be a walk in the park. There are going to be, bumps along the road.
Of course, integrating renewables at this scale, it's unprecedented. You need careful planning, the right infrastructure, a flexible regulatory framework.
And what about the social impact? Millions of people in India still don't have access to reliable electricity.
Yeah.
How does IEX, factor that into their vision?
That's a really important question. I mean, IEX's role in this whole transition, it can't just be about, market mechanisms. They have to actively collaborate with policymakers, with communities to make sure this shift towards a cleaner energy future, it's got to be equitable. It's got to be inclusive.
So while we're, excited about IEX's growth and innovation, it's important to keep those broader implications in mind.
Totally agree. This isn't just about profits. It's about building a sustainable energy future for everyone in India.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's safe to say that IEX is a company on a mission. They're not just reacting to the energy transition. They're actively trying to shape it. But how do their diversification plans fit into all of this? What are they hoping to accomplish by branching out into gas and coal? That's something we'll explore at the final part of our deep dive. And we're back for the final part of our IEX deep dive.
All right, let's wrap this up.
We've covered a lot of ground, their success in the electricity market, their commitment to, their customers and all those new technologies they're embracing. But now I think it's time to talk about their diversification strategy, specifically what they're doing with those gas and coal markets.
Yeah, and I think that's really key if you want to understand, IEX's long-term vision. Remember, the Indian government, they're pushing for this whole gas-based economy thing.
Right.
Their goal is to take natural gas from about 6% of the energy mix to 15%.
Which makes that, 93% year-on-year growth in their gas exchange, the IGX, even more interesting.
For sure. It seems like they're in a really good spot to, ride that wave.
Totally.
And they're not just sitting back and watching it happen. IGX offers this transparent platform for trading all these different gas products, right? Domestic gas, imported LNG, all of it.
So it helps establish a fair price?
Exactly, a competitive price. And that improves access for everybody, the buyers and the sellers.
So it sounds like they're kind of taking that same formula that works so well for electricity and applying it to the gas market.
Yeah, pretty much.
What about their plans for that coal exchange, though? That was a little, I don't know, maybe controversial given all the talk about moving away from coal globally.
Yeah, it's a bold move, especially in the global context. But, got to remember, coal is still a big part of the energy mix in India, right? And it's probably going to stay that way for a while.
That's true. We can't just ignore that.
Yeah.
It's easy to focus on those global trends and forget that India has its own needs, its own challenges. So IEX isn't just following the latest fad, they're responding to what's actually happening in the Indian market. So if this coal exchange gets approved, what could it achieve?
Well, I think it could bring some much-needed transparency and efficiency to the coal sector, and maybe even help with the transition towards cleaner coal technologies, help India balance their energy needs with their their climate goals.
So IEX is walking a tightrope here.
Kind of, yeah. Navigating that energy transition, dealing with the realities on the ground,
Makes sense.
and diversifying, going into gas, going into coal, that helps them not rely too much on just one energy source.
And become more of a complete energy solution.
Right. Exactly.
And think about like the potential for collaboration between all those different segments. I mean, imagine a future where you could exchange electricity, gas, coal, everything seamlessly through IEX. It would be this totally integrated energy marketplace.
That's a really cool idea, actually. It could lead to a more, I don't know, resilient energy system, better resource allocation, better supply and demand balancing, more flexibility when those energy markets fluctuate.
So it's not just adapting to change, it's actually shaping the future of India's energy landscape.
Nah.
So after this whole deep dive, what's your main takeaway? What stood out to you about IEX?
I think what really struck me is that IEX is more than just an exchange. They're like a force for change, driving that energy transformation in India.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in a way that's, innovative but also grounded in reality.
And that's what we wanted to highlight in this deep dive to give you a better understanding of IEX, their plans, the role they play in India's energy future.
And we always say there's always more to learn, right?
Always.
So dig deeper into that source material we provided and think about this. As those lines between different types of energy get blurrier and blurrier, what new business models, what new opportunities might pop up in this constantly evolving energy marketplace?
That's a great question to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.